Hey guys, welcome back to my channel if you're new here. My name is Sydney, and today's video is going to be all about creating a dupe for the Sigma Untamed palette. This palette came out 2 weeks ago. It's been a little while. I'm a little late to the game on this palette, but I asked you guys on my Instagram story the other day if you'd be interested in still seeing a Shop My Stash for Dupes video for it, and a lot of you were, and that made me really excited because I was already going to create a dupe with this palette. But I think it's absolutely gorgeous for fall, so I was going to create a dupe for myself to use anyways, and I'm so excited that I'm going to be able to share that with you guys in today's video. So if you guys have never watched a Shop My Stash for Dupes video before, this idea did originally come from Kaleido, and basically what I do in these videos is I look through my collection, I look through my palettes, I look through my singles, and I try to see if I can create a similar palette. So I have a huge, let me show you guys how huge stack of palettes here that I feel like are similar, or that I can create similar looks with, that would be close to the looks that are being created with the Sigma Untamed palette. I have an awesome singles like duped shade for shade option, as well as a duped but better option that I'm going to share with you guys. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely keep watching. So I do kind of like to start these videos off by just kind of chatting about my general thoughts about this palette. As I said, I think it is a beautiful, beautiful kind of jewel toned fall color story that makes me so excited to put on my sweaters and my boots. You guys, it's a little bit cooler where I live today, and I woke up this morning, I'm like, can I wear a sweater this morning? I didn't, but I thought about it for a minute. I had my chai tea latte this morning. I almost pulled out a pumpkin candle. I'm like ready for fall, but also like I don't want to start school, I don't want to go back to work. I'm just like, I don't want summer to be over quite yet. Anyways, back to this palette, you guys. I think the color story is stunning. I recently tried Sigma's eyeshadow formula in the Cordy Rosa palette, and I really enjoyed their formula. This palette looks to be of a similar formula based on the description. It's in black packaging, which I don't mind the inside, but I'm really not crazy about the outside. It's kind of like this like embossed zebra print. I don't know. It's not for me. It does come with a Sigma brush, and I've really enjoyed the one that was included in the Cordy Rosa palette. So I am really into this palette upon first glance. I can see a lot of really gorgeous, rich, kind of grungy fall looks coming out of it, and I cannot wait to see what looks other people come up with using this palette. It does retail for $49, and I am currently not really buying any eyeshadow because I have a lot, and I'm trying to really love on what I have. So today I wanted to share a couple of palettes with you that I felt like had a lot of those similar elements that you could probably create similar looks with in your collection, as well as a singles dupe that I created. So let's hop into the similar palettes that I already own in my collection that I'm pretty sure I could create really similar looks with. You guys, this is the most palettes I think I've ever had for this kind of video. Like usually I have like 2 or 3 in my collection that are maybe kind of close, but I have a lot in this one, and some of these are a bit of a reach, but I'm excited to share them with you anyways. So let's start off. So basically what I'm looking for in kind of my dupe palette is those really beautiful, rich blue, green, and red jewel tones. I think those are a really standout part of this palette. It does have a couple of like neutral sprinkled throughout and maybe some soft purpley shades, and those shades are in some of these palettes, but my main focus for what I was going after were those beautiful rich jewel tones. So the first palette that I have to chat about is the e.l.f. x J Kissa palette, and you may be looking at me and saying, Sydney, this is a rainbow palette, and I know that, but if you just ignore this like super bright row right here and you just look at that second row and even the third row a little bit, well, I guess it's first, second, the way you're looking at it, but you guys know what I mean. If you cover up this bright row right here and you just look at that really beautiful jewel toned row in the middle, that I feel like covers a lot of our bases. You've got the beautiful blue, you've got the green, you've got that mustard, you've got this beautiful kind of rusty brown shade, which I think is really gorgeous. Some of these shimmers I feel like kind of fit into this palette, like maybe these 3 right here. It's not like an exact dupe, but could you probably create some similar looks with this palette? I think so. As I'm talking about these palettes, I'm going to be inserting close-ups of them and kind of overlay them on top of the screen next to the Sigma Untamed palette, so you guys can get like a really good side-by-side comparison, but I will be chatting about the similarities as we go through them. Okay, next up, you guys, we've got one that I feel like is a little bit of a stretch, but I felt like I had to include it anyways, and that is the Arcana Palette from Kaleido Cosmetics. So this is a very new palette to my collection. I got it several months ago, and I feel like it's really just a fall palette. I've used it a handful of times, but really when I look at this palette, I see fall. So within this palette, you've got those kind of ruby tones. They're not quite as saturated as the red tones are in the Sigma Corderosa, or not Corderosa, in the Untamed palette. But they definitely are still there. You've got a beautiful mustard, you got a nice rich warm orange, you've got those two green tones right here. They definitely differ a little bit in tone and in depth than the ones in the Sigma palette, but again, probably pretty similar. You've got these beautiful blues that I just absolutely adore. I think they are the most beautiful tone of blue. Then you've also got a couple of nice pops of cool tones. I feel like this palette is missing the slightly purpley hued pop that the Untamed palette is, and the tones of the blues and greens aren't quite on the money. But again, when you blend them all out in your eyes, you could probably create some similar looks. Okay, next up we've got a palette that if you are looking at that Untamed palette and you're just thinking, I don't really know how much I'm going to use those pops of color, or I really only like the green and the red pops of color, this one's for you. And this is the BH Cosmetics Royal Affair palette. This is a palette that BH Cosmetics came out with for Christmas 2 years ago, I think. I feel like no one talks about this palette, and I thought it was a fantastic little palette, you guys. It has those beautiful greens. It has a really nice kind of salmony shade right here, and this shade right here is actually a gorgeous deep dark maroon. This shade is definitely a little bit deeper than the red in the Untamed palette, but again, on your eyes, it's probably going to be fine. And honestly, I would have almost preferred a little bit of a deeper red just to add a little bit more contrast to the palette. If you guys are looking at the Untamed palette and thinking you really only like the pops of red and green, this is a great option for you. It has a lot of neutrals sprinkled throughout, so I think this is a really fantastic option. It's one that I really love to reach for in the fall and winter because it creates such beautiful, like, rich fall looks. They're just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm so excited that this kind of reminded me to pull this palette out this fall. Okay, this next one is, I feel like, the palette for you if you look at the Untamed palette and you're like, you know what, I want more color. And that is the Menagerie Cosmetics Pharaoh palette, you guys. This palette has a very unique color story. It definitely has a lot more pops of color than the Sigma Untamed palette, but I feel like it has those beautiful greens. You do have a blue in here, although it's more of a teal blue. You do have a purple. Why did I grab this one? Now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is not quite as similar. I guess you do have that red tone. You have more of a bright pinky tone. You've got a couple neutrals sprinkled throughout. This is definitely more of a amped up, more colorful version of the Untamed palette, but I did think it was worth mentioning. The next palette I wanted to mention is my Colourpop Through My Eyes palette. I chose this one because it has a lot of those really pretty red tones in here. It does have some greens in here. They're not quite exact dupes to the ones that are in the Sigma palette. They're a little bit deeper and a little bit of a different tone, but they had those reds, they had those little pops of green. There's a beautiful eggplant purpley shade in here, which is not in the Sigma Corderosa palette, but I thought it was pretty anyways. It does have a beautiful orange right there. It has a yellow. And again, this one isn't spot on, but I feel like you could create some similar looks with these shades. And I feel like this one has a really nice balance of neutrals and colorful shadows, just like the Sigma Untamed palette. This next palette that I want to talk about is actually, is this the new? No, this is not the newest palette I've added to my collection, but it's a newer addition to my palette collection. I actually just did a video on it, so I can link that down below if you guys want to watch it. But it is the Artemis palette from Alter Ego. So this kind of doubles as a palette because technically this is a dupe of the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. And you guys know I've been drooling over that palette for like a solid year at this point. But this is a dupe for the Metropolis palette. So if you have the Metropolis palette, I'm also talking about the Metropolis palette here. But this palette, I feel like really does a great job of hitting all the marks that the Sigma Untamed palette does. It has the beautiful red right there. The finishes are slightly different, but again, similar looks, people. So it has the beautiful red, it has those pops of blue, it has the beautiful green, it has the mustards and the golds. It just doesn't really have those kind of light purpley tones, but you can probably find those in other palettes within your collection, or if they're really not located in your collection anywhere, you can always buy singles. So I think this is a really great dupe option. And then the final palette that I wanted to mention today is actually my So Jaded palette from Colourpop. This one is large and in charge, so I feel like it could dupe a multitude of different palettes, but I feel like this one has a lot of the similar tones to the Sigma I keep wanting to say Corderosa palette. To the Sigma Untamed palette, you've got the beautiful reds right there, you've got the yellows, you've got those beautiful grungy greens, you've got some grungy oranges and mustard tones. You do have that beautiful pop of blue. There's kind of a purple pop right here in that corner, like a purpley mauvey pop, but I think you could definitely easily create some similar looks with this palette. Maybe over my Instagram I will do some looks where like I recreate a look that was created with the Sigma Untamed palette with one of my dupe palettes or with my singles dupe palette. I think that could be really fun. Okay, you guys, now it is time to move on to the singles dupe palette that I created. So as I said to you guys, I created a straight up dupe palette and then I created a dupes but better palette where I kind of took the color story of the Sigma Untamed palette. Oh, one of my shadows broke. Anyways, I kind of took this color story of the Sigma Untamed palette and amped it up with some different textures, and I did change some shades just a little bit. But here is my just straight up dupe dip palette. I feel like I did a pretty darn good job with this palette, if I do say so myself. Of course, I don't have the palette in front of me, so I'm really just going off of pictures that I've seen online and swatches and all that. But nevertheless, I thought it would still be fun to share this with you guys. So let's hop into the individual shades that I put in this palette. Alright, you guys, so we're going to start off in the first row, and the first shade that I included in this palette is Colourpop Now and Then. It's just a beautiful kind of off-white shadow with a gold reflect. Then I included a mystery kind of like cool-toned champagne-y single. Then I included Colourpop Woke, which is a beautiful kind of soft matte peachy shade. Then I included Terra Moon's Martian, which is a beautiful like goldeny green shade. Then I included Cleona Honeycomb, which is a gorgeous sparkly gold. Then I included the shade Aim High from Sydney Grace. And then the final shade that I included in the first row is Colourpop Made to Last. Moving on to the second row, we're starting out with Colourpop Prism, which is a matte black. Then I'm moving into Sydney Grace Haven, which is a beautiful matte, like almost pastel purpley shade. Then I'm moving into Colourpop Wishlist, which is a beautiful kind of like deep reddish coral. Well, it's not really deep, it's more of a mid-tone reddish coral. Then I'm going into Sydney Grace Kiwifruit, which is a beautiful matte deep olive green. Then I'm going into Luxie Beauty Weakness, which is a gorgeous mustard yellow. Then I'm going into Colourpop Earthshine, which is a gorgeous kind of like purpley blue topper kind of shade. I thought this would be so much fun to layer. And then finally I'm going into Divina Hydra, which is a gorgeous like satin cobalt blue shadow. So what do you guys think of my dupe palette? I am really satisfied with this dupe that I created, and I'm even more excited about my duped but better palette. But before we hop into that palette, I do want to throw up some side-by-side swatches on the screen of my dupe palette and the actual Sigma Untamed palette, just so you guys can kind of see them side by side. So it's not perfect, but I feel like I did a good enough job to where I'm not really feeling quite so strong of an urge to buy this palette anymore. So let's hop into my duped but better palette. Alright, you guys, here is my duped but better palette. It looks a little bit wonky because I added some bigger pans into this one from some different brands. So it looks wonky, but I promise it's the same palette. With this palette, I really wanted to amp up the textures, and some of the shades in here, I made them like duochrome, so they're a little bit extra special, and I'm really excited about my duped but better palette. I feel like this palette, like I was excited about the original Untamed palette, but this palette makes me so excited to dip into this color story and really make it my own and create some really gorgeous looks. I just think it's really pretty. But before we hop into the swatches, I will throw up a quick close-up on the screen of my dupe palette and my dupe but better palette, just so you guys can kind of see the comparison side by side. Alright, now let's hop into swatches of my dupe but better palette. Alright, you guys, so the first shade in my dupe but better palette is Terra Moon's Light Year, which is the most gorgeous, like, multi-chromatic green, golden, shifty shade. It is incredible. I think this shade would be beautiful layered with the greens, layered with the blue, popped in your inner corner. So stunning. Next up we have Luxie Beauty Foxy Lady, which is like a silvery lilac shadow with like a beautiful gold reflect to it. It's a really unique shadow that I think would pair really beautifully with some of the tones that have been placed in this palette. Next up we have Colourpop Woke, which is again just a matte peach. You guys saw that in my original palette. Next up we have Divina Celestia, and this is very much the same tone as Terra Moon Martian. It's just kicked up to like 10. This one is much more textured, it's more glittery, it's more foiled. It is like that shadow but turned up to 10, and I absolutely love it. Next up, we have another one of Terra Moon's Iridescent Chameleon Shadows, and this one is in the shade Saturn Rings. This one has a very, very strong kind of golden reflect. It kind of takes the place of that first shade that I put in the other palette. There's a little bit of green in this one, but I feel like there's some pink and purple as well, so I feel like it would pair really, really beautifully with the tones in this palette. Next up, we have Sydney Grace Aim High, which is a beautiful kind of like pinky champagne-y shadow. I just threw this one in here to have another brightener inner corner or like all over bright lid shade. Then we have Colourpop Made to Last, which is kind of a mid-tone taupey brown shadow, nothing too special. Okay, you guys, moving on to the second row, we're starting out with Sydney Grace Keep Smiling, which is a beautiful kind of plummy, deep dark brown. I just replaced the black in here because I don't really find myself using black a whole lot, and I feel like brown is more useful to me in a palette. Then we have, once again, Sydney Grace Haven, which is that gorgeous kind of pastel lilac. Then we have Colourpop Wishlist, once again, which is that beautiful kind of deeper corally tone. Once again, we have Sydney Grace Kiwifruit, which is a gorgeous kind of like mid-deepish olive green shadow. Once again, we have Looksy Beauty Weakness, which is a gorgeous mustard matte shadow. And then I decided to keep Colourpop Earthshine in as that beautiful pinky purpley bluish topper shade. And then finally I decided to round out the palette with Jaded Glow Anomaly, which is a magical shade, you guys. It's like blue with a strong purple duochrome, and this one has a lot of beautiful texture and glitter and shine to it. And here is my dupe but better palette, you guys. I'm going to insert some pictures on the screen right now of this palette right next to the Sigma Untamed palette, and let me know in the comments down below which one you guys like better. Are you more into the Sigma version where it's a little bit more toned down and things are more like true jewel tones, or are you a little bit more into my versions where I added a twist to things? Let me know in the comments down below. I also want to let you guys know that I'm actually going to hop on my Instagram stories the day that I am posting this video and create a look using this palette. Maybe I'll recreate one of Sigma's looks with the Untamed palette. Maybe I'll just go rogue and create my own like fall-ish look. I haven't decided yet because I obviously haven't filmed it. But I am so excited to dip into this color story. I think that just about wraps up this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I upload 3 to 4 days a week depending on the week, and I do lots of other Shop My Stash or Dupes video on my channel. I have a feeling they're going to become very prevalent with some changes that I'm making in the next couple of weeks. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Leave me a comment down below with your thoughts on the Sigma Untamed palette and your thoughts on my dupes. I would love to chat with you down there. But I'm going to stop blabbering out for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!